Welcome to the 7th episode of the Building Smart Digital Twins podcast. My name is Aidan Mercer and I'm the Marketing Director at Building Smart International. With me today is Ian Howell, who is representing the US chapter, and he will be my co-host today. Following on from last week's podcast with Bart Brink of Royal Haskell DHV, our guest today is Jack Dangermond, President of Esri. Jack Dangermond is the founder and president of Esri. With a background in landscape architecture and urban design, he and his wife Laura founded Esri in 1969 on the idea that computer-based mapping and analysis could make significant contributions to geographic planning and environmental science. Since then, Esri has become the global leader in GIS and location intelligence, with 49 offices worldwide, 11 dedicated research centres, and a strong user base of around 350,000 organisations around the world. Dangermond has received many acknowledgements and awards for his contributions to the field of geography, environmental science, planning and GIS, including 13 honorary degrees. Welcome, Jack.
Hey, very nice to see you, Aidan.
We'd like to start by asking you a little bit about yourself. Where do you live? What kind of things do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, I was born in Redlands, California, and grew up in a plant nursery. That's how I got oriented initially to landscape architecture. And I still live in landscape architecture in a way. I live in Redlands, California, which is our headquarters. We have about 4,000 employees here, and as you described earlier, and we're scattered all over the globe. And I still like plants. I still like geography a lot. And I come to work every day. I sort of practice geography, that's what I would say, and the building of the tools that really distinguish Esri and what we do. These are largely called GIS tools. Some of the audience probably knows them quite well, and others probably maybe more remotely. But geographic information systems are basically digital geography. That's the way I think of it. And they allow us to bring geographic thinking into the design process. Sometimes that's been referred to as geodesign, kind of designing things in context. So many of the audience, your users or your subscribers or your supporters are from the design field. And I grew up in that when I was at university, so I understand it well. I always aspired to the idea that one could design things in context. And that means looking at all the physical geography and also social geography and also land uses that constrain design or support design or inspire design. So from an early age in university, I began to play around with computing and invented some of the tools that conceptually, they inspired my mind to go into this field. And I got passionate about it, like many of your listeners do, have done about, geo-enabling design or quantitatively guiding design or working with computers and design. These are exciting things because I could see even then, this was over 50 years ago, the idea that, man, this is going to actually take off. I can make a living doing this kind of stuff. And you asked me what I do in my spare time. I do like to garden and travel, but I really like my work, actually. I'm very fortunate in that regard.
Well, I think that's reflective in the 52 years, I think, now since you've formed Esri. And could you tell us a little bit about how that came about, the actual starting point of that, and what really motivates you even to this day?
I think it's no big idea or anything. I was just a student and was working in a laboratory, but I had to go for family reasons back to California. And I began doing little projects. I worked a little bit of time for a few months at a computer company, but I realized they didn't get what I was doing. So I began to just do work as a consultant to people. And that led to building for the first 10 years of our work, the application work, making computer maps for air pollution or for land use planners that would help them do their work. And after about 10 years, that it actually caught on. We would do little by little project work, starting with a site and then doing a land use plan. We didn't do the land use plans. We would do computer mapping and analytics to support land use planners and designers. And after really about 7 or 8 years, people began to say, could we get your tools so that we could do that work? And this led to the idea of creating a product. Our first product didn't really show up until, we had software products, but they were sort of like with homemade software. And we open sourced them, but they weren't well engineered, frankly. So I was joined by a colleague that was from Harvard, Scott Morehouse, who really is one of the great software engineers in the world, was and is. And then he started to collect a group of people. We now have several thousand of them here that really have a passion to build sort of first principle tools that do map making, of course, but also systems of record keeping of geographic stuff, and then visualization and then analytics so that people could interpret geographic thinking for various applications. And I'd like to say we're really heavy into supporting designers in AEC world, many of your users, but that's just only one segment of who we support. We support like the health world, like you probably are familiar, Aidan, of the COVID maps like at Johns Hopkins and thousands of others that sort of showed the epidemic spreading. But foresters use it, oil and gas community use it for exploration. The science community and especially in the academy use it for teaching and understanding geography. And then it's applied to city planning, of course, and transportation planning and asset management. And almost every utility that's digital uses our platform around the world to manage their assets and do planning work and design work. So this is a great complement to so much of the work that goes on in your space, the whole smart building and BIM environment, whether it be, as Ian, you described it, vertical BIMs versus like buildings and campuses, or horizontal BIMs. This idea of bridges and structures and so on, that these are databases all in of themselves, and they have a purpose for engineering and construction and design. But they're also through the partnerships we've been working on with different technology companies, and also thank you, by the way, for what you guys are doing in the standards world. We're integrating this GIS information with these focused AEC, especially prominent kinds of systems for design and engineering and construction.
I mean, I think that's so reflective in the amount of, let's say, customers or organizations that you have. I mean, large enterprises, cities, municipalities, as you mentioned, all those different uses of your software. Yeah. Did you ever imagine back in those days that you'd be supporting so many different types of industries and focus areas, and in all honesty, some very good causes as well?
You mean when I was a kid? No, it was a daunting idea. It's still a daunting idea. I mean, there's enormous responsibility that comes with our success, and we take that really seriously, quite frankly. I mean, I don't have a guilt trip going on about it. I just, you have to be a person in my position. You have to really be responsible for the footprint of users that we support. We have about 10 million people that actually work with our tools and within these different organizations. And then, of course, there's supporting all of our employees. There's about 12,000 of them around the world. And then there's this other responsibility, which is businesses that are built in association or our business partners. We have 2,800 of those. So in building our tools, we really have to engineer them well so that they can, I mean, it's different than building just a focused application. Part of our thinking here is to build generic, open, first principles-based tools, whether it's editing a map or managing the data or visualizing. And so we spend a lot of time here building and rebuilding the same thing over and over again until we really get it right. That's kind of the design concept behind our tool building. And we're really guided by a philosophy is we build great software that helps our users do their work better. And one of my colleagues, Scott Morehouse, often used that phrase because it really, each word mattered. Great software, do their work better, helping them, serving them. This is a great challenge. And we lucked out, to be honest. We never had to borrow money or take money. We didn't really have a lot of money, but we just sort of gradually built up enough capital by doing work. And so we're not sort of beholden to quarterly profits. I mean, I'm not saying that we're not profitable all the time and that we don't really think about that. It's just that we don't have to take a short-term view in the way we do engineering and tools. So we're driven largely by the users and what they tell us they want us to do. And that's a major impact and force, but also driven by just strong engineering people. And it's not unique. I mean, we're not unique in this regard. I mean, Microsoft and Autodesk and so many great software companies do the same thing. They're listening to their users and they have great engineering people. But we can take a long view. We're very fortunate in that respect.
Do you think that allows more innovation then, essentially, in that you can ultimately put more of your investment dollars into R&D, for example?
Well, I think so. Well, we put more, on a percentage basis, more money into it than nearly any software company that I've known. We take about a third of our profits and it goes into continuous R&D. And I'm not saying that that's always that productive. Sometimes we make mistakes, but not very often. So our engineers really take it very seriously. They're driven by what the users say. They're driven by great engineering concepts. And they're also driven by a third factor, which is the evolution of all the other technologies that we work with. The hardware. When we started, we were working on mainframes and then mini computers and then workstations and then PCs and now, servers and the web services. And all this, Ian, you're laughing here, I can see on your face, because you've lived with me through these different generations and you've seen that each, in order to be a great software company, we've had to adapt and adopt and refactor and re-engineer the tools as they evolve through these various cycles. But the hardware is only a part of it. The operating systems on there was a part of it. And being able to run on all the operating systems was important. And then being able to interoperate with the different DBMSs was important. Oracle and Sybase and Informix and DB2. And because a lot of our customers would store their tabular data in these databases, and we had to be able to make data-driven mapping and data management of features, particularly in the utility business. You'd have these different kinds of, so that's always evolving. And then there's the ability, the visualization capabilities, and the chips, and now with NVIDIA and so forth, being able to and do memory based, and then big databases in the sky, the cloud stuff. You have to just continuously not only innovate, but also be affected by the other things that are changing. I mean, in a way, we're one important niche in the overall ecosystem of IT, but that little niche is important. It's location, because at the heart of geography is locational data. And our users really create and they update and they manage this locational data, which, I know I'm really biased on this, but it sort of hinges all the other data. It puts, you put BIM models on a map, or you see population on a map, or you, with imagery, from spacecraft or drones, you see, you're able to bring this information in and overlay it on top of layers in order to create understanding. And as my good friend Richard Saul Wurman once said, understanding precedes action. And so much of what AEC is about is action, updating, changing, building, constructing. These are the actions, but they need contextual information or they need understanding. So he always says to me, Jack, you're in the understanding business. You just didn't realize it. I think lots of people are, but anyway, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I certainly share your passion about the importance of geocoordination and the context of everything geospatial. And, even going back to the start of my career and remembering the whole concept of smart cities and how that felt so promising and certainly wonder if we're going to get there soon. And of course, we rely on the importance of location within all of that.
Yes.
I am.
Yes, smart is a process, not an event. That's what they say.
Very good point.
Cities are getting smarter as they wire up all the, the things that move and change with sensors, the IoT and so on. So we've been challenged in that regard with geography and GIS. It's basically we're streaming in living maps. So we used to have, geology maps that didn't change very much. But now traffic maps, noise maps, air pollution maps, they're dynamic. So being able to structure in our GIS tools the ability to bring all that kind of information into it. Then one of the common intersections here in the great work you guys are doing is building standards so we can interoperate with the whole built environment and bring it in, but also build our own digital environments that nest and interoperate with all of the work that your listeners do.
Exciting times. Yeah, fantastic. So I guess we touched on a little bit earlier around sort of COVID, and I know the last 12 or so months have been very challenging for everybody, and everyone has been affected in one way or another. From your perspective, how has the pandemic, what's been the overall effect of the pandemic, and what has the impact been on Esri in the transition to moving your workforce online?
It's an interesting question because, we all have been experiencing it personally. I stayed at home a lot in the beginning, and that's probably everybody listening here's view. You had to learn how to adapt. And we were very fortunate because of the great IT organization that we have at Esri. We were able in 1 week to pivot from being in offices to working from home and using Teams and Zoom meetings. We were able to just not miss a beat, and we just kept working right along. And in some cases, we were able to be more efficient. But I think people do long to come back and be back in their offices and socialize and have kind of what I call spiritual communication with each other. There's something magical that is a little bit missing now. But I think in a broader context, I see it affecting cities. I don't know if we have enough time to tell this story, but some people have talked about the idea of the last pandemic 100 years ago, where automobiles were a brand new technology and they were just starting to emerge. And people saw in their eyes that, wow, I could own a car and I wouldn't have to live in this tenement housing downtown, and I wouldn't have to go in the public transit and get infected and so forth. So I'm not saying that the pandemic did it all, but at least it opened people's eyes to the idea of, wow, we could use this new technology and live in the suburbs and have a nice life. And that idea kept growing and growing through the 20s and changed the fabric of cities. Now, I think the same kind of thing is going on today with all work from home. And that's that, you look at downtown London and there's nobody there. They got millions of people that normally commute in and they live in, they interact with each other and it's a big beehive of interaction. But today they're not doing it. There's only a few thousands of people that live there and the place is desolate. And okay, it's all going to come back to life. I'm not painting doom and gloom, but it did open up the idea that the digital technology would replace some of what we have to do physically. And frankly, in my company, we saved a lot of money because people are not traveling as much. And also people are engaging with customers and users more freely. And I can stay at home. I don't have to be on the road all the time. My wife is happier. And I'm speaking on behalf of our users and our customers and all of us. So it's going to change things and how we see it changing the city. That is, historically, the city has had to manage different kinds of infrastructures, like the water infrastructure and the road infrastructure. And the listeners here, they build and create and design it. But that there's a new infrastructure emerging, the digital infrastructure, and I would say more specifically, the geospatial digital infrastructure. So this is really a new foundation on which cities will operate. And the digital maps now connected to iPhones for collecting data and contributing into a cloud environment so everybody knows where everybody is and they can redirect work and be more efficient in the field. Our users are just embracing this, and their vision is building this citywide or countywide or statewide or nationwide GIS. But GIS isn't the right term. It's really geospatial infrastructure, which takes on the meaning of many distributed servers, each of them serving out data on the web. And through open standards, these layers of data coming out of every server can be mashed up and put together and create living geography. This idea of smart city that you mentioned before is emerging right in front of our eyes, and it's accelerating. So my business is actually accelerating as a result of the pandemic. One last thing, if you don't mind, I'll say, and that is our users have been very active in first mapping the cases, like the Johns Hopkins map. That now has received over 2 trillion views. It's reached over half of the planet population. And people look at it like they look at the weather map, But there are at least 5,000 other servers, the WHO, the counties, the cities, CDC, national ministries of health all over the world, who stood up these mapping services to show their geography and what's going on. But also that moved into then, taking those curves and forecasting the curves where it's going to go. And then that was overlaid on top of hospitals. So we saw about the capacity of hospitals. And designers, all of you listening, know exactly what I'm talking about. You could really forecast the impact and therefore respond better. And also to be able to locate the right places for testing and in the right places for now vaccination, and then tell the president, in our country here, how is it going? How is the first 100 days? Seeing the daily report. All of that's geography and living action. So I'd just say that's the first of many of these big challenging waves: climate change, or loss of biodiversity. And geography is becoming a framework for people to understand through mapping and also do analytics and make the world better. And I'm really going on and on here because I'm really hopeful that many of the listeners get this, that they expand their AEC business to include GIS tools and building GIS contextual practices. In other words, be entrepreneurial about it, not just, that's kind of neat on the side. No, there's an opportunity with very simple tools to be able to help the world be a better place. And part of it is integrating it in with the design and engineering and construction practice. That really is the big vision that we have in connecting with so many of the AEC firms.
Yeah, we do feel we have a very representative community that are entrepreneurial, and indeed, we've seen a real acceleration ourselves, even this last year, in the ability for our users and community to want to, as you say, connect through open APIs, different sets of data, to analyze different sets of data, to use it for useful means, and such things such as sustainability has become a huge topic within Building Smart. Really very fast. In our last summit, we talked about sustainability, and I know one of the quotes I remember from Roger Tomlinson all those years ago was that he hoped one day to create a global GIS. And do you think that's possible? Is it going to happen, or has it happened? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I'd simply say that the technology that we build now responds to 4 patterns. One of them is the desktop pattern. So somebody can get a desktop, ArcGIS desktop, and they can run on their little PC and do GIS project work. And they create data, They get data from other people, shape files and so forth, imagery. They put it all together and they do their project. That's one pattern. And the second pattern is servers. So a second technology we have is a server. You stand it up in the cloud or on your own hardware, and you can access many layers of data and combine them and make interesting maps and maintain the system of record in an organization, like in a city. You have a citywide GIS, and police and fire and planning, every public works, engineers, they all can use the same data. And you build a system of record and you visualize it and use it. The third pattern has been the cloud pattern, the SaaS pattern, where you can put your data in the cloud and people can view it. They use the cloud, of course, it's quite commonplace, and BIM modeling the same thing is going on. But in our world, we have now over 10 million subscribers to our SaaS pattern, and they share information up there. And now over 40 million data layers have been put into the ArcGIS Online cloud, and they use each other's base maps. And then we at Esri build something we call the Living Atlas. We spend literally $100 million a year taking government data and organizing it and making it open and available to our customers. So the reason why I'm saying this, Aidan, is because that is a global GIS. I mean, we have thousands of layers that cover the whole planet. Every night we download the Landsat data and also the Sentinel data from Europe and the MODIS information, and we put it into our cloud and make it available to our users every day. Every night, 400 new Landsat scenes coming. And that ability in the cloud to be able to provide then the overlay of that on hurricanes or on global geology, or so, it's a global GIS. We don't really call it that, but it is a cloud-based sharing environment for people to upload and share their maps that others can use. Most people, I'd say about 60% of the users do share it openly, either as open data or as open services that other people can ingest inside of their clients. And then the fourth pattern that's emerging really right now is an open pattern where we have opened up the bottom end of that ArcGIS Online environment as PaaS or platform as a service. This is really standards-based services, REST services, which stream out features or stream out maps that can be embedded inside of apps. And this is the kind of platform that we've developed with Autodesk to geospatially enable, their engineering and their CAD and their BIM environments. And we do the same thing with Salesforce. And we do the same thing with SAP. We do the same thing with health providers. I'm trying to remember the name of the big one. So we're entering into a new age of not simply focused projects, but also streaming location services. This is really base maps, like the Google kind of base maps, or geocoding or routing services. So this is the fourth pattern of geo-enabling the rest of the IT infrastructure. That's where this little location thing is so very important, is it provides context for all of IT. So the big vision is, yes, not world domination, but world encapsulation of information and sharing it openly so that people can use it in various ways.
Well, my mind is officially blown. That is incredible that gets downloaded every night. I'm amazed. It's absolutely fantastic. Really interesting. So, Jack, the title of this podcast is focused on digital twins, and I guess everyone has a perspective on it. I'm really keen to hear yours.
Well, the concept of digital twins came out of Michigan with the modeling of cars, and then later into aircrafts, and to put cars in wind tunnels and have a complete digital twin for testing and evaluation. And that sort of evolved into the idea of, ultimately it became the model for BIM's complete digital twin, which would be transactionally maintained. And I'm very fond of that idea. If we look at GIS, it is, a technology that's 50 years old, which was an attempt to build a digital twin of forests or of water networks or of utilities. And that digital twin was designed to visualize this digital expression and analyze the layers of geographic information and update it in a system of record framework. So it was a kind of living digital twin. We never called it that. It was an information system, just like a financial information system is a digital twin of your money. This is a digital twin of geographic stuff. So our users are now embracing this term, saying, wow, this is really interesting. The GIS creates a digital twin of whatever the geography you have, a city or a landscape or physical environments, or even a digital social twin, or being used a lot in the whole issue of racial equity and racial justice and injustice today. These are contextual twins, and where it really intersects with so much of the building environment is that you can actually bring in a building environment and put it in context and evaluate the impacts of that kind of digital twin in a contextual digital twin. And our digital twins with reality capture, one of your backgrounds, is becoming all 3D in both point clouds and meshes, but also 3D in the sense that 3D editors in our tools can now update the sort of building envelopes of cities easily. And you can overlay into that IoT, like see where all the buses are moving around. So we get kind of a digital twin of a city. And you like this term, smart city. I mean, it's being sort of overshadowed now by the digital city, but these are just marketing terms, frankly. The reality, however, is that GIS is a creator of a digital twin at a different scale of things, and it also is an integrator of other digital twins.
It always amazed me, actually, that the context of a digital twin or a city, when used with those meshes, were actually engineering ready. So they were usable for engineers. The fidelity of the data and the geometry of the information that was captured through that point cloud or photogrammetry was actually engineering ready, which I always thought was amazing.
And we acquired a company last year called InFrames that is now, they have a product called Sure, and it ingests digital imagery, whether drone or aircraft, and it's a massive automation factory and creates these I3S digital meshes, which are like, I think of them as like a 3D picture. And we have integrated that into our GIS so you can have this 3D mesh and you can have the vector data invisible behind it. So you can be interacting with a 3D picture, the context picture, and the attributes start popping out. And you say, oh my gosh, you get a really smart, a very fast 3D city with very inexpensive means. You just get this software and it cranks away and gives it to you. And you can do it at scale, which is, for me, the thrilling part of it.
I'll be sure to check that out. Thank you for that. And
I'll show you a demo anytime.
Sounds good. So we've talked a lot about, Esri and your geospatial context, but I think, I'm really keen to learn more about your contributions to, let's say, GeoBIM. And you have a technology called ArcGIS GeoBIM. It looks immensely powerful. It's cloud-based GIS BIM repository for a variety of workflows. Could you give us a little more on that? And maybe we'll provide a link in the description as well.
It's not released yet. It'll be released in about, I think, 2.5 months, right in that time frame. And we'll make some big announcement, I'm sure, to involve you in it. But out of the work that we had in our partnership with Autodesk, by the way, which has been just a fantastic relationship, we've been working on how do we integrate their BIM models with our ArcGIS environment. And we've, file to file or open files integration. We now in ArcGIS Pro can read a BIM model, a Revit model, and we can visualize it, and we can in turn take that reading of the model and publish it as a web service so people can see it in the browser and query it. And so it's really been amazing. But as they have moved to cloud and as our users are all moving to cloud, we wanted to take the next step, which is to integrate all of their cloud data sets and technology with all of ours. And that really means linking geographic features to graphic entities within these design build environments. So one of our engineers invented a way to dynamically build keys that linked features to entities, right? Mm. And then by making those links available as a service, you can build applications on top of it. So it's building on the web services framework and building on our cloud and their cloud environments. And then building a whole series of our family of apps that can look at things like issues on a building site, or inspections, or support in devices, because our software, through web services can support any device, as they say, anywhere, anytime. You can actually access this virtualized information, which leverages the whole design, construction, build environment with the geographic context. And so this was all done sort of by hand by a lot of the AEC companies that build their own software to do it. So this summer we'll be releasing this technology, which is not for the, it's really simple to use, but we put a lot of resources into really building that connection. And I just, quite frankly, the work that you guys are doing is fantastic with creating this open standard that will cover all BIM models, so that we'll probably use exactly that same vision for being able to bring in your BIM, the members in your organization, all the smaller companies that are building BIMs, be able to read those into Pro, our desktop tool, and also do Federation. So we have a lot of hopeful thinking, and I just want to say thanks to the Autodesk Corporation. They've really been, they've taken a real bold step with us in opening up their technology and making it available to our customers, which, by the way, many of them are their customers. It's really been interesting to synergize our respective technologies. And on the open side, again, I just want to acknowledge you guys for the vision of getting an open standard that we can support consistently across the community.
So, Jack, that's a great summary of how you've been able to work with Autodesk and really take some of those lessons and apply them to some of the smaller AEC software authoring companies. One of our other Building Smart partners is the Open Design Alliance. They publish an IFC software development toolkit and also an open IFC viewer. So how do you see that also helping getting many other companies to benefit from the same advantages that you described with your Autodesk work?
Well, we're embracing it. I mean, as you may know, we have become a member in that alliance, and we'll be engineering the integration of their IFCs right into our fundamental product. And so, I suppose you could ask the question, Ian, do we support open standards? That's a good question. Look, any company is a damn fool if they don't support open standards. And we have long done this. It's been really, if you're going to work in a complex, heterogeneous IT world, which is today's world, you must be open, and you must be interoperable with other technologies. And we address that challenge in a couple of ways. One of them is direct engineering between our products and the data models or the technologies of our colleagues in other software companies, whether they be competitive or not. And the second way is to support open standards. And that's a little bit less optimum in terms of performance often. It just is, because you're transliterating the data sets, using interoperability procedures rather than direct connections. But we also support that. And then the third dimension of it is being open ourselves, which means having open APIs that other people can engineer their products on top of or in association with, so we have interoperability in that way. And I guess the fourth one is having an open architecture so that our architectures can blend together with other IT as a kind of a layer, geospatially enabling other IT and also interoperating with other data sets in a federated environment. And there's another one, actually, it's worth mentioning. 10 years ago, and before that, actually 20 years ago, a movement began around the world. It started in the UK, but also went across the United States and, well, it's all around the world, of open data, which means being able to search and download and put into a neutral format the data that our customers have. And that has been, a key point of our server technology is you can open it up and make it available through a website for delivery in multiple formats so that people can choose their own software. I mean, we don't own the customer's data. And I know, Ian, that's a strong philosophy that you have. What the hell? Esri doesn't own the customer's data now. And there are some vendors, by the way, that suck it all up and keep it in their cloud. I'm not even going to mention names, but those kind of things are so 1980s style world domination. So, all kidding aside, it's very important, I think, to support these different elements of interoperability, and I think that's what has been part of the reason why we've been successful with. I mean, there are tens of thousands of places where our technology is operating at an enterprise level in a heterogeneous, complex environment of our tools, our competitors' tools, open source tools, et cetera. And that's the name of the game. So, well, why not distinguish yourself? No, you can't do that. You've got to be open.
Right.
And so how do you distinguish yourself? You just got to run like hell. Like I say, in our case, we're lucky because we can spend all of our money back into R&D, and that's been part of the reason why we continue to grow and be accepted in the market as a market leader in highly competitive environments. I mean, we face gargantuan companies which would like to eat our lunch, but we always have. I mean, when we were $1 million or 10 million or 100 million, right, it's always been the same. So nothing changes. You have to be constantly innovating to be able to be a survivor in this kind of world.
Absolutely. So I'd like to join two things together, which is obviously Esri has a culture of partnering. And we've also talked about digital twin previously. Putting those two things together would be referencing the fact that Esri have recently joined the Digital Twin Consortium. And I was just wondering if you could share with us what you see as some of the objectives and outcomes from that partnership.
I think it's just a part of our continued commitment to be open, I guess. I can't really predict what's going to happen as a result of the consortium, but what I can suggest is that when these consortiums come together, there's kind of a cooperation that happens among various partners, and some of it's, they're doing it, I should do it, or so there's some competition, or right. But then there's also a huge amount of learning. So yes. I really love engaging with competition. Okay, I hate competition, right? Everybody does. But on the other hand, I was a long distance runner when I was a kid in high school, and some guy comes running up against me. I hate this. But then I move ahead, and he makes me faster, or she makes me faster. That's the name of the game when you're in technology, and that's really the beauty of what technology is doing today. We're living in a cooperation world where, in philosophical terms, we're evolving the foundation of the world, the nervous system of the planet, the digital nervous system of the planet, the digital twin of the planet, and we have to use this kind of interoperability and at the same time run like hell, getting better and distinction. That's what actually creates such a rich ecosystem in the technology field.
Absolutely.
Well, we're not far from our time, and we have a few more questions, if you don't mind, Jack. And
no problem with me.
One of the questions I had, and it's really one of the distinguishing features of Building Smart, is the term of open BIM. It's really our way of developing an ecosystem through, as you mentioned earlier, open standards and the benefits of our users being able to access information when they need it at the right time. What is your fundamental approach to what we call Open BIM and the support that we've seen from you, from Esri, towards Building Smart International?
Well, I think we're for it. We're with it. We want you to do your best job. Watching standards evolve over the years, you have to have well-designed standards if people are going to accept it. So you can simply say, okay, I'm going to be a standards organization, but the standard is worthless. It doesn't perform in the tools. So there's always a relationship between tools and data models. And vendors like ourselves and Bentley and Autodesk and IBM and Microsoft, they always try to build very, very responsive data models for a particular type of data, whether it's tabular data or map data or image data, and then build very powerful tools that can exploit those data models. And that's what really makes great products great, is you keep refining and improving the data model and keep refining and improving the tools. And the offerings for that from a private sector perspective are really, there's always 2 or 3 vendors that sort of dominate the field, and they keep competing, having better data models. But when you introduce the idea of having an open data model, that data model has to be very responsive, first off, and it also has to be designed to be able to work with those tools effectively. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't work. What GIS is interesting in the sense that we like to read every data model and not bring it into our system, but be able to dynamically view it. That's the miracle of web services, is you can have a REST service and you can view it and match it up in a GIS, overlaying the different views of it, and do some analytics and work with it. So having the ability to have open data models that are responsive for the various vendors that use them, it might not be the core data model that a particular vendor has, but having it as an open environment means that the users benefit. They can look at heterogeneous environments and bring them together, sometimes using GIS, as a matter of fact. So it's federating, integrating, and making available the information.
Fantastic. How exciting. So a lot to come from Esri. I had one final question, I think, which was, I've spoken to some of your team members that say you have some exciting plans to support IFC, our industry foundation classes data in 2021. Could you expand a little on that, please?
Yeah, one of our desktop tools is called ArcGIS Pro. And like I say, it's being used by millions of users. And in integrating the Autodesk Revit environment, we spent a lot of time engineering the ability to access and visualize that model for our tools. And that has been very popular. So we have decided in 2021 to do exactly the same thing with this model, is visualize it and bring it right into Pro, and then use Pro as the platform to be able to publish it out as a web service and visualize it. Yeah, so this will open up opportunities, I think, for some of the partners of the Building Smart operation all over.
It's wonderful. It's really exciting. And I think our users and our community are going to be really enthused about that. And certainly sounds like something we should share at our next international summit when we get back together. So that'd be exciting.
Well, it takes engineering, and I think I'm very thankful for the partners that we've had, and now new partners. It keeps evolving, and the whole ecosystem of the built environment keeps evolving. We need to lean heavily on people like the two of you to help us understand and build the confidence in these models and bring the community together to be able to make a better future.
That's wonderful. Well, Ian, do you have any other questions for Jack?
No, I think we've looked into Jack's crystal ball at some of the exciting vision that he has that really does say global GIS is an achievable goal, and the interoperability that means that many, many different companies and their data are contributing to that is just really exciting. Jack, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Think of it like a nervous system. We're measuring. It's kind of like your nerves. You measure when somebody, pokes you or touches you, and that goes into your brain, and your brain cognates and creates some level of understanding, and then there's a response. And, think about our world today. We've got these waves of climate change that, everybody that's listening today are going to have to work on climate change. We've got to decarbonize our world. We have to lower our footprint enormously. And that's going to come down to the people who actually are actors. It isn't like I can do this from satellites and sensing. No, we've got to look at the transactions that we're carrying out as human beings on the planet, which is build, construct, maintain, and try to figure out how we can decarbonize it, how we can minimize our footprint, how we can create a sustainable future, or we're not going to have a shot at it. Ian, you and I will be dead, but young people like Aiden, he'll be suffering if we don't get our act together. This is important. I'm sorry, don't be offended. You'll probably be
not at all. You and I are the ones with gray hair, Jack.
Or no hair. That's
well. It's a wonderful thought that leaders in our industry are focused on this, and it's very heartening to hear. I think for everyone listening that the tools and solutions that are being worked on and innovated on and generated will have an impact on the sustainability of our planet for the future. And I think that's a really good way to end this podcast with Jack Dangermond. I would like to thank Jack particularly for your time today. It's been absolutely fascinating. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Learned a lot, and I'm still amazed that tonight as maps are going to be downloaded overnight and made available. And thank you, Jack, very much for your time today.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Ian.
And thank you, Ian, for your co-hosting today. And next week we'll be talking to Andrew Anagnost and Amy Bunsell of Autodesk, which will be a nice continuation from this podcast. We'll make any links available throughout this podcast in the description below. And we'd like to thank our listeners for your time, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Building Smart Digital Twins podcast. Thank you very much.